Greetings. This is a presentation for ethnic studies on the film Sankofa and Sucker Free City. Now, Sankofa, the film was directed by Holly Jarima, and it focuses on consistent themes of transformation and realization. The main character is Mona, also known as Shola, and she is transformed throughout the film, which is a result of her being transported back to colonization and being a slave on the plantation. Now, Jarima explains throughout the film of the dimensions of human rebellion and also breaking the cycle of dysfunction. Now, Sandra Grayson also wrote an essay based on the film Sankofa, and Grayson observed that the initial Asante sign in Sankofa are centered on the Sankofa bird, also known as the buzzard, and the symbol is a spirit of the dead, yet it also is a reminder to not forget your past. So throughout the film, we see the divine drummer who communicates with the dead, and he actually calls out to the spirit of the dead. And it's no coincidence that the first scene is filmed at a slave port or the slave castle in West Africa. And there's so much to unpackage with this film. Is quite emotional, to say the least. But like I said, Mona, initially she's a model and she's being photographed by a non-melanated, by a Caucasian photographer, and in one of the photo sessions, she keeps seeing this individual with a staff. That individual is the divine drummer, and all of a sudden, Mona begins to chase the divine drummer and ends up getting lost, and she sees a group of chained melanated people, and then Mona gets teleported back into the past. Like I said before, during the colonial era, so she's enslaved on the plantation, and that's when her name is Shola, and she endures physical abuse, mental abuse from the slave owners, the enslavers, and she witnesses so much trauma around her. One incident that really resonated was an escaped slave had been captured and she was pregnant, yet the enslaver whipped this woman till she transcended, till she was no longer alive. And a resilient enslaved woman by the name of Nunu was actually able to save the baby. And yeah, that scene really messed me up, just seeing some of the hardships that, you know, my ancestors, melanated people, had to endure in this wonderful place we call the land of the free. And please excuse my sarcasm. But throughout this film, we see characters such as Joe, who is Nunu's son. You know, he's a product of sexual abuse, and he frowns down upon his mother and anyone who is melanated, and he follows the priest Raphael's teaching about how melanated people in the field are heathens and follow Jesus, and these depictions of Yahshua ben Yosef, commonly known as Jesus, are non-melanated. So off the bat, Job associates non-melanated people with being the high power and melanated people being heathens. So he's conflicted all throughout the film, even to the point where he accidentally kills his mother, and that was a very emotional scene as well. And yeah, throughout the film, Shola and her, the man she's in love with, Shango, who's been transported, or who's been imported, shipped from the West Indies. He has a rebellious mentality, and Shola tries to reason with him and tell him to be more passive, and Shango just can't go for it. And after one of the incidents where Shola is abused, Shango comes to comfort her, and he gives her a Sankofa necklace. And Shola says she began to be a rebel at that moment, and soon thereafter, there was a rebellion by the enslaved people. And while this is occurring, Shola was about to be abused again by one of the enslavers, and Shola actually chops him down with a machete. And then in the narration, it says that she was being chased. However, the Sankofa bird takes her up in the air, and she ends up being back in front of the divine drummer at the slave port off of the coast of West Africa, and she sees Nunu there. And it was another example of transformation and the past being connected to the present. And yeah, it's a heavy film. It's a great film. I think Haile Gerima did a wonderful job with directing the film and putting emphasis on not forgetting the past, yet continue to move forward in life. And that concludes the film Sankofa. So give me a second, and we're going to move on to Sucker Free City. Okay, now in regard to the movie Sucker Free City, it was directed by Spike Lee, and it focuses on three different families. One family who's been affected by gentrification and has to move to Hunters Point, and it focuses on another family, or another character who lives in Chinatown, and another character who's resided in Hunters Point for his entire life, and that's who I'm going to focus on for this specific segment. His name is Keith. He's played by Anthony Mackie, and he's a member of a gang. However, he's striving his best to make the transition from that underworld into the legitimate world, and he's making these changes by trying to get his fellow gang members to think more positively. He's also making an effort to get in the business of bootlegging, although it's not entirely legal per se, it's still more positive than selling drugs or robberies. And a few of his gang members are willing to listen, and some aren't. And this film really captures how inflation and gentrification causes people from different paths of life to intersect and cross paths, but also goes into depth about the history of Hunters Point once being a thriving community full of melanated people, black people who were working in the shipyards. And once those jobs went away, the poverty went up. And it's also anonymous for being a place with poor air conditions and high pollution. So it's safe to say the residents of Hunters Point are resilient, and from the outside, people think it's just a monolith that just poor people doing illegal activity, and that's not the case. And in the film Sucker Free City, you see Keith making strides of trying to get into the world of production, not just bootlegging. He takes care of his grandmother who has dementia, and you see him making strides to be a actual asset to his community and not a liability to his community. And yeah, it definitely breaks that stereotype of just melanated people, black people, just one way, just thieves and thugs and drug dealers, just negative people. And it seems like a lot of other ethnicities, nationalities get judged on individual basis, where melanated people, highly melanated people, especially black people, are always summarized, stereotyped just to be one way. And that's one of the best parts of Sucker Free City. It highlights the diversity that exists within black culture, where it's not just one thing. We're not just one way. We don't have one style of living, multifaceted, like all humans and all cultures are. And that's something that's been highlighted throughout the class, of the different facets, the different aspects of African American, black culture. It's not one thing, it's not one way. It's various, it's multi-layered. And hopefully Sucker Free City will one day get the proper respect it deserves, like movies like Magnum Force, or shows like Streets of San Francisco. Sucker Free City seems to go under the radar in regard to being a classic film filmed in San Francisco. So, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the presentation I prepared for Ethnic Studies Fall 2024. And y'all take care out there. Thank you.